What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Dead on Dave. Welcome back to the channel. It's Saturday. That means the top 5 game, and we've got a mind blower, epic one, a legendary subject. Buckle up, stay tuned. It's time for top 5. Let's go! Cut the music. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Dead on Dave Productions. It is Saturday, so that means it is your top 5. And as I sat here yesterday doing 2 videos, not only the SmackDown review, but I did a Tales of Sports and Entertainment. And I did one on the legendary tough guy Ming. And, of course, that made me get to thinking of all the other legends and myths that are out there and the most eccentric of them. What crazy ones abound? Which ones do people believe? So that led me to do a top 5 on the greatest myths and legends in the history of wrestling. Now, before we continue, please understand that these are all myths. They're legends, and they should be considered as such. None of these are known to have 100% truth associated with them. We have no idea what's real and what is fantasy. And that's kind of the way it should be. Some of these stories are epic. Some of these stories are a little gross. But they all have a little bit of semblance of possibility of being true. And that's kind of what makes them special. That's kind of the whole allure of wrestling when you think about it. The possibility of everything that we are watching, everything that's unfolding in front of us every Monday and Thursday and pay-per-views, that it could be real. That this world, these athletes, everything about it is true. That's the allure of it. That's what makes us keep coming back. It draws us in. And it should be no surprise that the actual athletes and people behind these performances on television lead quite the interesting existence quite often. And many of them have associated with them notorious, nefarious, and just downright despicable tales. Some not as despicable, of course, but quite funny. And we're going to talk about a bunch of them right now. So without any further ado, it is your top 5 greatest tales and myths in wrestling history. Let's start like we always do, and of course that is your honorable mentions. And we're just going to talk about 3 actually, really quick. John Bradshaw Layfield has been around a long time. He's kind of known as an old school guy, and he's notorious for lack of a better term, being a backstage bully. That's how some people would put it. He puts it as hazing. You know, he's practical jokes. He likes he believes in new guys paying their dues, and he has very interesting ways of hazing young wrestlers. So there are so many stories about JBL and this very instance that I'm about to bring up that you almost have to believe it. This is one of those where, I don't know, it seems quite possible. But, and the fact that JBL's kind of kooky. So, of all the things that he is said to have done, probably the weirdest and most bizarre has to be him jumping into showers with the new wrestlers on the roster and helping them wash up. I don't know why that's hazing. I would let him do it. Say, go ahead, clean my junk. And then I would take pictures and say, look at how a legendary wrestler wants to clean my balls. But that's just me. That's just me. I'm a weird guy. I don't mind getting my balls touched by anybody as long as it's done in a loving or, cleanly fashion. I don't care. You can touch my balls. I don't give a shit. Just, be of age and and don't hurt them. I don't care who you are. Yeah, sucking them, that's a different thing. But that's a different story altogether. So that's an interesting one for Mr. JBL. I don't know. I kind of tend to believe this one. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is JBL a serial washer? Or does he just like to haze the new guys coming up? I'm sure he doesn't do it anymore. One of my favorites, and I wish that there was more to this story, that I could have made this as part of the top 5. It's just because I want to believe it so bad. It's just one of those funny-ass stories. Norman Smiley is one of the probably greatest jobbers in the history of wrestling. He always seemed to have more talent than his jobber status would suggest. He always very, very good in the ring. Had this weird personality. I mean, we're talking about the big wiggle right now. Norman Smiley. Here's why I like this story so much. Because you got Norman Smiley, who looks like a goof. He's gangly. He's got the weird hair. He's always smiling. And then you have Rick Steiner. These are the two guys that are in this story. Rick Steiner, who looks like a real tough guy, looks like a badass, looks like a psychopath, always wearing those damn headgear all the time. So here's the thing. I guess the moral of this tale is never judge a book by its cover, because according to the legend, Norman Smiley smacked Steiner with a one-hitter quitter and knocked him straight the fuck out during a bar fight. Now, I hope this is just one that I like Rick Steiner, but I hope this one is true. I think it's hysterical. It's one of those, if you just picture those two in a bar and then picture Norman Smiley knocking out Rick Steiner, that image has to make you laugh. Has to. Absolutely a must. And if you don't know who these two are, go ahead and Google both of their names right now. It's okay, I'll wait. Pause me. Go Google them. Get a picture of Norman Smiley and get a picture of Rick Steiner. Now I want you to imagine Smiley tooling Rick Steiner in a bar. And that should give you the smile that would make you want this to be just as real as I want it to be. The last honorable mention, there's only 3 because the list is, I have a huge list here and there's a lot to talk about. The Von Erich family. Okay, you see, the Von Erichs have an unbelievable history. I mean, 5 of them have committed suicide. And this family is just riddled with heartbreak and horror and just, it's really, really sad. But aside from their sad endings, the Von Erichs have also been known to provide us with some of the oldest and most famous myths in all of wrestling. I mean, there are stories going back as far as Gene Kiniski buying Kevin Von Erich a hooker when he was 12. When he was 12. And there's another hooker story. There's another hooker story involving Chris Von Erich when he was 11. I mean, this is crazy. There's multiple stories of guys like Kerry Von Erich killing a cat, which by itself doesn't seem to be like a big weird deal. But when you hear the story of how he did it, seeing a cat and just deciding to grab it and using his famous claw to grab and crush the cat's skull. I mean, these Von Erichs were weird. There's all kinds of stories with booze and, I mean, there's nudity. I mean, just weird. There are story after story after story of strange events with the Von Erichs. And speaking of nude, there's also quite a few wrestlers who are kind of known for being, nudists. Nudists like Kevin Sullivan and Raven both have been reported to be big nudists in their spare time. It's crazy. In fact, there was a lot of reports of Raven walking backstage naked at events. Now, I don't know if that's true. That one doesn't seem right. But the Von Erichs, these really aren't as much myths as they are stories that many people have witnessed. And of anything on the list that I'm talking about today, these are probably the ones that you can probably bank on the most. And it's just sad. I mean, one of the most athletically gifted families you'll ever talk about, but man, were they troubled. God, were they just unbelievably troubled. So there it is. There are your honorable mentions. Now, if those didn't make the cut, well, which ones did? And before we get to the actual top 5, I want to rest assure everybody right now. I want you to lay your minds at ease. Some of the more ridiculous and, let's face it, downright revolting ones, like, I don't know, probably the most disgusting active one that I can think of that still makes the rounds, and one that I'm not going to really talk about too much other than just mention it, is this retarded notion that Kevin Sullivan was behind the Benoit murders. Suicide, the Benoit murder-suicide. That is an actual myth going around. Like, there are conspiracy theorists who believe that it was actually Kevin Sullivan who perpetrated the entire crime. I can't even begin to fathom how crazy that is. It's just, that's how crazy it is. I can't fathom how crazy it is because my brain doesn't work that way. So those type of stories, they're not going to be told here. I just want to kind of, before you, if that's what you're expecting, you don't have to expect it. And I know some of you guys out there have heard it, and I'm sure some of you guys were probably expecting me to talk about it. So I just wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way. Now, let's get to the actual top 5, and let's start with number 5. And I like to just call it Seeing Double. And the reason for that is one of the longest and enduring and believed legends in history is wrestlers dying and being replaced. 2 are far more famous than any others, even though there are many suspected such events in the world of lucha libre. A wrestler dies, but his mask carries on, and they don't really make reference to it. Now, there are 2 that stand above everybody else in the world of regular wrestling, and that, of course, is Kane and the Ultimate Warrior. They're both legends in the business, and more importantly, they both had multiple stretches where they missed long periods of time. And then they would make their returns. And on some of these occasions, they would look a lot different than they did when they left. So this obviously would lead to the questions if, as both of these original characters had died and been replaced by new wrestlers. And the fact is, both men have had quite the change in their looks, which is really what prompted all the talk. But after all of it, after all the words that have been said about it, because I know I've been hearing about the Ultimate Warrior in particular since I was, in my teens. That one's a long-standing rumor. We know now that it's bullshit. Glenn Jacobs and Jim Hellwig are always and have always been the men behind the masks and the paint of their characters, Kane and the Ultimate Warrior. Now, the most impressive thing about this rumor is the fact that even though, the Ultimate Warrior has now actually died, and there's all the evidence and people have busted this one to hell, it still persists. And same thing with Kane. These rumors still continue to crop up every now and then with new evidence being founded. But the reality is, I don't think there's almost, to those of us who are not completely in conspiracy land, there's no question that Jim Hellwig and Glenn Jacobs were the only Kane and Ultimate Warrior. But hey, as P.T. Barnum once said, there's a sucker born every minute. So that's number 5. I think that's a really cool one to start our list with. Everyone seems to believe that the wrestlers' characters goes on, and the WWE would hide their deaths and just replace them with a new one. I don't know. We've seen crazy things. Wrestlers don't usually have to die for them to try to replace them. I mean, they tried to do it with Diesel and Razor Ramon. Didn't work out too well. Fake Undertaker didn't work out too well. But for someone to actually be dead, that's a different story altogether, I think. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there anyone out there who still believes that the Ultimate Warrior was two different men? Does anyone believe that? I don't know. If you do, put your case in the comment section below, and we'll all make fun of you accordingly. Sound good? Sounds good to me. Number 4, WrestleMania 9 and Hulk Hogan's Black Eye. Here's what we know. Hogan showed up at WrestleMania 9 with a black eye that nobody witnessed happen. Hogan, at the time, refused to talk about it, and most importantly, his friendship with the man that has almost as many legendary tales about him as anybody. Yeah, it's almost second to none the amount of... He has copious amounts of legendary tales about him. And, of course, I'm talking about Randy Savage. That friendship was known to be visibly strained at the time. All of those factors led to the story being circulated that Macho Man blamed Hogan for his divorce with Ms. Elizabeth and Falcon punched Hogan's face. Hogan, to his credit, now maintains that he got the black eye during a skiing accident. So now this makes me pose the question to you. What is more believable? Macho Man losing his shit and defacing Thunder Lips, or the Hulkster on skis? Yeah, not very sure I'm sold on the Hulkster on skis, brother. Let me tell you something, dude. No, I just don't buy it. So, I don't know. This one could easily be true. But, yeah, it falls to the ether of myth. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is Macho Man that crazy? I don't know. Well, I'll tell you this much. This isn't Macho Man's only appearance on the countdown, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's get to number 3. A lot more to talk about with these final 3. The first 2 on the list were kind of, hors d'oeuvres to get you ready for the real good stories. This next one, number 3, has a couple of different parts to it. And number 3 is just simply about Psycho Sid and the fact that he has issues. Let's start with WrestleMania 13, which, was quite a forgettable event, except for Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart, which is honestly one of the most important matches in history. But other than that, the card just was lackluster. It was main evented by Sid and The Undertaker, where, of course, Taker won to extend his just growing relevant streak. The streak was just becoming relevant. Taker reportedly found new meaning to the phrase shit assignment when Psycho Sid allegedly crapped himself partway through the match. Well, do you believe this tale, or does this just have the wrong smell to you? See what I did there? Because I'm talking about poo and poo smells. That's funny. Now, if Sid being on, if that was just the only one, this probably wouldn't even make the list. But the fact is, Sid has other tales about him, and the second one is so much more entertaining and just absolutely delicious in its craziness that I absolutely had to add both of them into one category for our number 3. Bottom line, Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid is nuts. It was his gimmick, and those that know him say it's not a stretch for him to play it. So, it's not really hard to believe that for a time, Sid reportedly had a pet squirrel, and he used to take this squirrel with him everywhere. everywhere he went, every venue, that squirrel was with Sid. That's been reported quite a bit. We know that's probably true. There's been, I've seen at least 15 to 20 different reports from different wrestlers talking about Sid's squirrel. Okay? Another thing we know about wrestling is that there is a hell of a lot of downtime, and people like to make jokes, bets, all kinds of weird things, dares, pranks, you name it. It happens. Sit around for a long time backstage waiting for their time to perform. So it's really not a stretch to think that there would be some kind of dare or bet involving Sid's little furry friend, the squirrel. And according to this legend, that's exactly what happened. A couple of wrestlers went ahead and dared or bet Sid to place the squirrel in his pants for 60 seconds. Now remember, Sid is crazy. That's the underlying theme here. He's nuts. So he accepted. And 30 seconds into the dare, his little buddy allegedly turned on him, being none too pleased with being shoved down his owner's pants. Now, depending on the variation of the story, because there's a couple different variations on the ending here, the squirrel either crammed himself up Sid's ass or absolutely bit his dong off altogether. Either way, we know Sid ended up requiring emergency medical attention to his lower half. So there's three things that we know from the tale. And, the fact that he more than likely did have a squirrel. A lot of downtime in wrestling, and wrestlers are crazy. Sid himself being crazy. And Sid did have to have medical emergency during around the time frame in which this myth was said to have happened. So I don't know if when I told this to my wife, she said, I don't think a squirrel can bite off a dong. She's probably right about that. I'm not sure that somebody's memba could be bitten off by the little teeth of a squirrel unless Sid has a little tiny paquito. You never know. You never know. But quite interesting. At the very least, it's possible that his twig and giggleberries got defaced by the furry little tree dweller. I don't know. What do you think about that one? I love that one. I want it to be true. Oh my God, I want that one to be true. It's too funny. I do have my doubts that the squirrel Richard geared him. I do have doubts about that, though. But that's number 3, Psycho Sid and his many, many issues. Number 2, probably the most disgusting thing on the list, if it's true. But let's go ahead and start it. Number 2, we'll start with this question. What could have possibly led Randy Savage, who is one of the few stars, as well as obviously the biggest, what could have led to him never returning to WWE after leaving the company in '94? He got a good send-off by McMahon, who on television wished him luck and all of that, but something about the entire situation seemed odd. Now, Vince has always put business in front of anything personal and has brought back people over the years, brought him back to the company that have shit on his name publicly, taken him to court, and even attempted on multiple occasions to completely put him out of business. Hulk Hogan being one of them, who after tried to do it in WCW, came back just to leave again to try to do it with TNA. But yet, he came back. Ultimate Warrior, who once held Vince up for hundreds of thousands of dollars at a major event, brought him back. Piper, crazy Piper, brought him back. Bruno Sammartino, brought him back. Everybody gets brought back, but not much. Why? What could have happened? Is there anything that could blind Vince to the truckloads of cash he and Randy could have made together? I think as a father, if anybody out there has kids, there is one thing that could probably keep you from caring about it. So let's talk about this bombshell. The legend goes like this. Savage had an inappropriate relationship with a then 14-year-old Stephanie McMahon, causing a rift between him and McMahon that could never be bridged. And to the day that Savage died, there was probably no contact between the two. Now, the reason to believe this myth is that it's so disgusting and so game-changing that if it did happen, and as long as it was consensual, not that that would make it any better, mind you, burying it and never talking about it again and just getting him out of the company would protect way more people than going public would punish. Meaning that just by letting it go, and as long as he didn't actually forcibly rape Stephanie, which is far more horrendous than just a weird, creepy old man having consensual sex with a 14-year-old, though that is not okay at all either. Don't get me wrong here. As long as all of those things happen in that manner, it would protect her, it would protect the company, it would protect so many things, the wrestling business as a whole, just by burying it and letting him walk. They go public, her life is changed forever in probably more negative ways than positives. His life is ruined. Vince is probably under unbelievable scrutiny from then on. The wrestling industry could be irrevocably damaged and splintered and broken after something like that. So letting him walk might be the saner option. Now, on the other side of that, I don't think this is real. I think it's bullshit. Because logic points us to this being fake simply because Savage did finally make it into the Hall of Fame this year. And if it were true, and you couple that with the fact that Macho has repeatedly targeted Steph while taunting Triple H on the internet in the years leading up to his death, saying that he would take Stephanie around the block, yeah, he would have never, and The Rock means ever, gotten in. He just wouldn't have. Doesn't matter how much money could have been made. You know, there's no way it would have happened. None. Could Vince be that dollar blind? Would Triple H have allowed it to happen? I just don't see it. None of it makes sense. But the story's been around for a very long time. Very, very long time. With some variation of the story being that Macho actually did rape Stephanie. Now, that seems like the biggest stretch to me because I don't think anything would have prevented Vince from going to the authorities had that have actually taken place. You could think Vince is a bastard all you want. You could think all these negative things about the industry. But, I mean, as a father and as a logical man, and I'd like to think for the most part, Vince, I've met Vince McMahon, and he's a pretty good guy from what I had a conversation with him. Pretty good guy from everything I was able to make out. And nothing too fake about the entire situation. Now, granted, it's hard to know just from one meeting. But at the same time, I did not get the sense that he's a man who would allow his daughter to be raped with no repercussions, let alone giving him a very nice send-off on television. Even having consensual sex with Stephanie, I don't think Vince would have been able to go on Raw and wish Macho the best. So I think there's just too much logic and everything that points to this being absolute bullshit. But it's a hell of a story. It really is. And there's so much more to it. Macho Man going crazy in the years prior to his death and everything, and all the insane things he put on the internet. The rap album that he made. I mean, Randy was absolutely insane. And sometimes in the best possible way. It doesn't take away from the type of performer and amazing competitor that he was. But man, there are more stories about him in the world of wrestling and his backstage antics than just about anybody else. I mean, Andre the Giant's certainly up there as far as stories, but not too many people are in front of Macho Man. So that's number 2. Macho Man and his unspoken love with Stephanie. What do you think? Were they somebody rocking, knocking the boots? What do you think? I don't know. Tell me in the comment section below. This one actually kind of makes me physically angry thinking about it because it's revolting. It's really disgusting. Stephanie was 14, if this is true. I mean, it really is one of the most disgusting things I've ever read about in wrestling. And some people watching this might go, well, wrestling's a disgusting industry. Allegedly, I mean, there's obviously some bad aspects to the corporation, to the business, to the industry. But what businesses and corporations that have been around for as long as wrestling has doesn't have a sinister background to it? I'm not saying that forgives it or that washes the hands of it in any way, shape, or form. It's just something to think about. You know, hell, there are squeaky clean companies that you would think, and you know, I'm sure there are friggin' Coca-Cola, that has a pretty nefarious background. You know, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. So like I said, moving on from number 2, not too many people have more stories and more crazy tales about them than the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Remember, nothing face to face. Nothing face to face. There is one man who has more tales. There is one guy. And he is our number 1. Yes, he and the tales that revolve around him. He also happens to be my favorite wrestler of all time. So number 1 is just simply about HBK and the Clique. There are so many stories and rumors about good old HB Shizzle. I could easily make a top 5, nay, top 10 list just about him. But instead, I'm going to give him his very own slot and run down some of the better and insane stories involving Shawn Michaels. Let's start here. Shawn has a way of stirring up trouble anywhere he goes, be it off camera or on, as he proved with his now infamous Sunny Days promo, where he insinuated that a married Bret Hart and Sunny were feeling like making love. Dun, dun, yeah. He was saying that they were getting it on. Now, and he did it on air. And as a kid, I didn't know what the hell it was. He just said, Sunny Days. I didn't get that as a kid. I had no idea what the hell that meant. I didn't know it was a euphemism. I certainly didn't know it was a shot, let alone an insinuation. But as with most things with the showstopper, back then at least, his antics would lead to a fight. And according to Jim Cornette, he's never been on the non-ass-kicked side of an outcome of one. Now this time, the fight happened in the form of an alleged backstage brawl between Shawn and Bret. And of course, we know that all of this would ultimately lead down the road to the Montreal Screwjob, which in itself has garnered a legendary status of its own, as there have been many questions over the years from people believing the entire thing is the most elaborate work in wrestling history. These people are, of course, idiots. And as my good buddy Tommy C would say, they probably need to get fitted for a new tinfoil hat. As for Hart and Sunny, I guess we'll never know. But I think it's bullshit, and my logic for that is, well, quite simply, there's no way a man could be as big of a grumpalumpicus as Bret is. If they had gotten a piece of Sunny back then, I mean, good God. Sunny was bad back then. There's just no way he could be so sour had he had gotten a piece of Sunny pie. I mean, I just don't believe it. I don't think it's humanly possible. I do, however, believe that Shawn probably nailed her a few times. That would not surprise me at all. Let's move on to some more Shawn Michaels tales that have led him to being the number 1 legend of this entire category. We talked about fights. And of course, the aforementioned brawl with Bret Hart is not the only time HBK would be at the center of fight rumors. Backstage at WrestleMania 11, word went around that a jealous Tommy Lee, yes, Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, brawled with Shawn himself, probably pounding him into the fucking dirt with his legendary cock like a friggin' railroad spike. As for why, remember, Diesel, Shawn's opponent at that WrestleMania, was set to be escorted to the ring by Tommy Lee's then wife, Pamela Anderson. So, you fill in the rest. What do you think happened? And to give you an idea of the brazenness of Shawn Michaels that would lead to you to think that maybe something did go on and Tommy Lee lost his shit, well, here you go. This time, this is a story that Bret Hart himself referenced. At a Slammy Awards, he referenced an infamous beatdown of Shawn Michaels. And of all the fight stories that Shawn Michaels has been involved in, and Lord knows there's been a lot, this one is probably the most widely believed to be accurate. Now, the story goes like this. Shawn was out with the British Bulldog and Diesel. And they were in Syracuse, and Shawn, with those two big brutes with him, felt pretty much punch-proof. Like, nobody's hitting old HB Shizzle tonight. So much so that he decided to take a run at a few women who were with a group of Marines. The Marines, not surprisingly, beat the shit out of Shawn, who was mercifully saved by the aforementioned Diesel and British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. This one is very believable. Very, very believable, but there are so many stories, and I don't even want to call them fight stories. So many stories about Shawn Michaels getting the shit kicked out of him. There's quite a bit. So this one, I believe, I think this one's really, really close to being 100% accurate. And the fact that at a televised event that really, back then especially, the Slammies were known as kind of a shoot. And people would go up on stage and they would talk in character a little bit, but they always say things that were real. Because the Slammies used to be on WrestleMania weekend. And it wasn't just like a Raw event. It was what was before the Hall of Fame ceremony, and it was, everybody got dressed up, people gave speeches. It was actually a really cool event. I would like it to go back to that because that was fun. It would be cool if Friday night there was the Slammy Awards, Saturday night was the Hall of Fame, and then Sunday was WrestleMania. That'd be really cool. However, getting back to Shawn Michaels, this isn't the only stuff that Shawn Michaels has been accused of doing. And this next one involves the Clique. You know, being around friends that could back him up was not a new thing for Shawn. You know, he had an infamous group, the Clique, that he ran with. Everybody knew about. The Clique pissed everyone off. And at the time, the new arrival, Jerry Lawler, was no exception. You see, when Jerry came in, he was said to, by multiple sources, to have had a really bad attitude. It was described as arrogant and really self-entitled because of his status from the South. You know, he's king of Memphis. You know, we're talking about a guy who's been around for decades. And the Andy Kaufman's team, he really did feel like he was one of the biggest personalities in the history of wrestling. And perhaps, in a way, he's not really wrong. However, long story short, the Clique, at the time Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Sean Waltman, with a little bit of help from Curt Hennig, decided that Kingfish needed to be taken down a few notches. And allegedly, they all shit in his crown. Yes! Please let this be true. Now, if this happened, it comes to no surprise of me that Hennig was involved. So let's face it, this prank, it's just perfect. This is great. I love that one. I hope it's real. There are literally hundreds of rumors about the antics of Shawn Michaels. So let's sort of cap it with one of the most depraved of all of them. Now, you can look up all of the different stories, that, especially when it comes to sex with Shawn Michaels. But let's give you an idea of just the type of fucked up human being Shawn Michaels once was. Okay, let's put a cap on this and end it right here. Shawn Michaels once picked up 3 girls, smoking hot blondes, from a bar by an event that he was working, probably in some town. I think the town was actually listed. I just didn't write it down. And he brought them all three he brought back to his hotel room, where he instructed them all to get on their knees for what they probably assumed was a good old-fashioned suckfest. Instead, Shawn Michaels whipped out his friggin' dong and golden showered over all 3 of these young ladies. Yeah. All I can really say is thank heavens this man found Christ. Oh my God. If there is one man, now you could believe in religion or not. I mean, if you want to believe in invisible people and, you know, afterlives and all, that's on you. Go ahead. But you know what? If there is one person who probably really needed it, really needs that belief, it's Shawn Michaels. I'm going to go ahead and say Shawn needs that belief. Nobody spoil him that it's probably not true, because he needs it. If that foundation crumbles, who knows what Shawn will be like in his 50s and 60s. My God. Terrorizing nursing homes. Good old HB Shizzle. Even with all the stories, I mean, he's my favorite of all time. I absolutely love Shawn Michaels. And I'm glad about the turnaround he's had in his life. Now, Jim Cornette and others say it's absolute horse shit. But, you know, you can choose to believe that if you want. You know, just because he believes in God doesn't mean he has to be a complete perfect person while talking to you now either. He's still going to be that same dickhead that he probably always was. Now, he just thinks it's all going to be repented and he'll go to heaven anyway. That's what being saved is all about. So what do you think? Is Shawn Michaels the deserved spot of the number 1 here, or were there better myths and legends that I didn't cover? Andre the Giant and his insatiable appetite for alcohol. Or how about the fact that he once lifted up a car? I mean, there's all kinds of great myths, but I wanted to stick with these really outlandish myths that have gotten a lot of traction as real. I mean, just about all of these on this list here, many people have recounted them as fact. And I think that's the most important thing, which makes these stories a little bit different than some of the others that you will hear. And there are hundreds, probably thousands of stories that you can find on the internet. I found all of these through different sources on the internet, and they're fantastic. So I encourage you all to go out, look for some of the most outlandish stories, not only in wrestling, but in all of sports. There are crazy stories that these guys, these athletes, have done. And I'm going to continue to do shows on them because I love it. So look for more tales of sports and entertainment, past, myth and all that, because they are fun. There's just so many. Oh my God, there's so many. So with that, I think we're about done. I think it wraps it up pretty nicely. I appreciate you guys joining me. I also appreciate you guys for getting me to 600 subs, man. Getting us, because we're a team. We're all in this together. So thank you guys very much for continuing your support. Big things are coming to the channel. Big things. I'm real excited about some of the things that are coming down the pipes. A couple I can talk about. A couple I can't talk about yet. One of them that I can is Creators Corner should be returning soon, with a whole new crop of people who are going to be interviewed. Should be a lot of fun. I got a couple of really good surprises, I think, for everybody. So that'll be real exciting. But there's a lot going on. I'm really excited about the future of Dead on Dave Productions. And, of course, the entire community that I belong to. And that, of course, is Joe Cronin and Tommy C., amongst others like Jeff the Huff Huffman, Dave Rose. There are so many people in our community that help in different ways and are part of the team. It's great. So If you guys want to be involved in the channel in your own way, you can go ahead and you can support Dead on Dave Productions by going on to Spreadshirt.com and checking out the Dead on Dave Productions merchandise site and picking up yourself a nice little copious shirt or a mug. Drink from me, people. Drink from me. So you can do that, or you could send me a meme on the various ways to contact me, which is up in the ticker. But I'll go ahead and recount them for you here. On Twitter, at DeadOnDaveV. On Skype, davidvancura, DavidVancura. Right here in the comments section, or of course, on Facebook, / this guy's take on it. You go ahead and contact me. If your meme is funny, if it's interesting, I'll put it in the meme slide. If you want to get yourself promoted right here on Dead on Dave Productions, contact me offline and we will come up with a situation that is beneficial to both you and I will promote you either through logos or give you a shout out or a full-on, full-fledged commercial right here during shows. You guys just contact me and for further information. Other than that, thank you guys for joining me again for your top 5. Make sure you're also checking out Joe Cronin's show tonight, because at some point we should be doing State of the WWE. And also tomorrow, Dead on Dave is live right here from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 solid hours of viewer questions. And when you're done with that, you go over and check out my boy, yo boy, the tinfoil dick, Tommy C, and his channel, Shot from the Point, and their show, Shot from the Point Live, the Mothership Show. So make sure you check that out as well. Other than that, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. As always, we will see you next time right here on Dead on Dave Productions. Thank you guys very much. Peace. And remember, if you're not talented, have talented friends. I'm out. Peace. Again.